morning, students. We are having revision these days, and the very first chapter from Hornbill I have started with. And yesterday we read this story written by Khushwant Singh, Portrait of a Lady, where he's talking about his relationship with his grandmother. And we have read the very first paragraph in the second one. Now, she had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Like she's talking about his grandmother. These are the physical features that short and fat and bent. Her face was a crisscross of wrinkles. There were too many wrinkles. Crisscross means. I think we read it. I remember it. Yeah, right. I guess so. No. So terribly old that she could not have grown older. Yeah, right. We have not read it, and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. My grandmother, she seemed so old, as if like she was stuck in that ages old frame of like she never came out of that particular frame of old, that state of oldness. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. Like, I don't believe that she was ever a pretty lady, but she was beautiful. I don't understand why the author is making any difference between pretty and beautiful. Maybe he finds it different. She hobbled about the house. Hobble means to walk in a little bent ways, in spotless white. She would always wear a white sari with one hand resting on her waist, like, you understand this, to balance her stoop means the bent position, and the other telling the beads of a rosary. You remember the old people, they keep chanting, so rosary is that. Her silver locks were scattered. Locks means hair. They were scattered untidily, not in a very tidy manner, over her pale, puckered face. She had a very pale, pointed face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. Like she would keep chanting something which people may not hear. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, and she was an expanse of pure white serenity. Like serenity is, you understand, like calmness, quietness. And she was like that, breathing peace and contentment, very satisfied soul, kind of. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city. So I was left when they moved. We were constantly together. She used to wake me up in the mornings and get me ready for school. Like she would get me ready. She said her morning prayers in a monotonous sing song. Monotonous means every day is like a routine job. It was like in a very boring way. Sing song means that continuous chanting, that continuous way of chanting things, while she bathed and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. Like every day she would say it so that I may learn it, by heart. I listened because I loved her voice, but never bothered to learn it. Then she would fetch my wooden slate. Slate, you must have seen it, yeah. Which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk. A tiny earthen ink pot there would be, and a red pen. Tie them all in a bundle and hand it to me. After breakfast, of a thick stale chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dogs. Now, my grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. Now, why she went? Because it was close to temple. The priest taught us the alphabet in the morning prayer, while the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayers in a chorus. My grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. Scriptures means holy books. When we both finished, we would walk back together. This time the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home, growling and fighting with each other for those chapatis which we threw to them. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. This was a turning point in our relationship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets, and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city house. There were no dogs, so she started feeding to sparrows. As the years rolled by, we saw very less of each other. For some time, she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being around, and all these things, the world being around. Now, this made her pretty unhappy. She could not help me with my lessons because these were all in English, so she could not help them. And she did not believe in the things which they taught us at the English school, and she was distressed, means very sad, that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. She was very disturbed because music to her had lewd association, means very lowly thing. It was the monopoly of harlots. Harlots means sluts and beggars, and it was not meant for gentle folk. She said nothing, but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. We'll stop here, continue tomorrow.